Alright? It's not because they were Muslims that this was happening. They weren't raping these girls for Islam, and they weren't doing it because they were fucking Pakistanis.
Sargon of Akkad, your popular This Week in Stupid videos are reliably replete with examples of stupidity, but sometimes the stupidity emanates directly from you.
It's not because they were Muslims that this was happening. They weren't raping these girls for Islam, and they weren't doing it because they were fucking Pakistanis.
Underage girls groomed by gangs and forced into sex rings. And what's making the cases all the more shocking is that the men involved are of Muslim origin, their victims white and non-Muslim.
The gang members were Muslims, most of Pakistani origin, in contrast to their victims.
It's not because they were Muslims that this was happening. They weren't raping these girls for Islam, and they weren't doing it because they were fucking Pakistanis.
So, Pakistani Muslims groomed some 1,400 British girls for sexual servitude, and you can't conceive of any reason why these grooming gangs consisted almost entirely of fucking Pakistani Muslims. It could just as easily have been Japanese Buddhists or Randian objectivists. The fact that Pakistani Muslims worship a 7th century pedophilic savage who brutally subjugated young girls and said it was okay to enslave non-believers, means nothing to you. Now, even supposing that these Pakistani Mohammedans had all renounced Islam prior to committing their heinous acts, we still could not eliminate from consideration the possibility that there are traits intrinsic to the Pakistani population that might make its members more prone to engage in abhorrent behavior, more prone than, say, white Britons. To put it bluntly, Sargon, Pakistanis are a heavily inbred population. The genetic degradation that results from inbreeding leads to lower IQ and higher rates of mental illness, among other afflictions. People with cognitive deficiencies tend to act more impulsively and more tribally, and thus may be more susceptible to joining militant jihadists or rape gangs. In Pakistan, more than 2/3 of all marriages are between first cousins. Among Pakistanis living in Britain, 55% of marriages are between first cousins. So you see, Sargon, fucking Pakistanis are fucking their cousins, thereby fucking up their gene pool. And the more Pakistanis who flow into Britain, the more genetically degraded Britain becomes.
Because there are such small biological differences in human ethnicities. Just so fucking small. And in fact, I can't think off the top of my head of any ethnic differences such as skin colour or eye shape or anything like this that would account for radically different cultural practices. What possible reason, what possible biological reason must say, I don't know, Muslims having to commit female genital mutilation to us not doing that? I mean, what tiny difference? The amount of melanin in our skin, is that it? Is it the type of hair we have? What is accounting for this?
What about brains?
There are some variations. For instance, there's a difference of about 50 cubic centimeters in the size of the brain of the average American Negro and the brain of the average American white.
Yes, it is true that the countries with the highest IQ are also those that have the most wealth. But has it occurred to you, Andrew, that they are also the countries that can afford the best education? You are putting the cart before the horse, Andrew. This is your map of intelligence by country, Andrew, that I'm going to colorise to make sure that you can see clearly the distinction. And fading in and out over it is a map of the Human Development Index of each country. Yes, they're fucking shockingly similar, aren't they? This seems like a reasonable enough method to conclude that the people in Africa are not stupid because they are black. They are stupid because they are poor.
So black Africans are generally stupid, as you put it, and the countries populated by these stupid people have economies with low per capita GDPs. Well, what type of economies do you suppose people with congenitally low IQs would produce? I mean, if low IQ Africans had highly developed economies, that would mean that IQ doesn't matter. But if IQ is a highly heritable trait that has something significant to do with economic outcomes, then obviously you'd expect national IQs to match up with respective rankings in the Human Development Index. The fact that they do match up does not validate your conclusion that stupidity derives from poverty. If you're going to invoke social justice warrior arguments against biological race differences in IQ, you might as well mimic what the informed social justice warriors say. The ones who have actually studied race and IQ know that race differences don't go away even after adjusting for socioeconomic status. It's a well-established fact that white and Asian students born into working-class households score higher on tests than blacks born into more economically advantaged middle-class homes. That's why the cultural Marxists invent unverifiable, unfalsifiable concepts such as white privilege to try to explain chronic black underachievement. It's important to emphasize that even the children of poor and poorly educated East Asian immigrants, Chinese seamstresses, Korean grocers, Vietnamese refugees, outperform other racial minority groups and their white American counterparts. The triple package: how three unlikely traits explain the rise and fall of cultural groups in America. If you want to believe in some set of invisible, immeasurable, all-powerful white privileges that give Northeast Asian populations their smarts, then that's an arbitrary faith-based position you can take. In any event, your belief that poverty is the cause of racial variations in smarts is empirically false.
I don't want people's religious ideologies being infused into their political life. At all. And as an ideology, Islam has some major flaws, but as a faith it's no different to any other faith.
So I gather you're trying to make a distinction between political Islam, which is bad, and the religion of Islam, which you think is a religion of peace, just like all other religions. I'm not quite sure what to make of this radical egalitarian proclamation. All faiths are the same? All faiths are equal? That's as stupid as asserting that all political systems are equal, or all cultures are equal.
The United Nations say that all cultures of the world are equally important.
But as a faith it's no different to any other faith.
That no religion is responsible for terrorism. I'll bet that's a relief to you, right? Those terrorists who killed you only thought they were acting for religious reasons. Silly guys. I guess they were just bitterly clinging to their Korans and their scimitars.
And you know, Sargon, you claim to be a freedom-loving liberal at heart who opposes both the totalitarian left and the reactionary right. But no liberal or libertarian who actually valued the ideals they wrap themselves around, free speech, equal rights for women, peace, and social harmony, would stand for the Islamification of their homeland. You can have your liberal values, or you can have an incessant influx of inbred illiberal Muslim immigrants. Take your pick. You can't have your cake and eat it too. If you value your freedom, then man up. Stop retreating into cowardly, politically correct claptrap on race and culture. Help turn back the Islamic cultural incursion and the dysgenic demographic seeds it's sowing.